Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, I was recently having a conversation with a friend all about a production of Henry V we'd seen during Shakespeare in the Park literally 20 years ago. And shockingly, the two of us remembered so much about what went on in that particular production. And we've seen tons and tons of different Shakespeare plays through the years since, but for some reason that particular production really stayed with both of us. And I think that really goes to show how a well done production or adaptation can really stick with us, can really resonate and, just sort of change the way we view a work. Now, not all of us can make it to these really grand and beautiful productions of outdoor Shakespearean plays, but we do have access to a ton of really phenomenal film adaptations as well as retellings, all through our Milan-Berlin library cards. So it's very easy to create your own Shakespearean film festival that you can watch right inside your own home. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be focusing on some really, really interesting Shakespearean adaptations and retellings. This week is going to be all about really easily accessible retellings that will appeal to viewers of multiple age ranges. But if you are more of a purist and you prefer adaptations that are more faithful to the text, then definitely stay tuned for next week. It'll be all about those. So as I said, all of the recommendations from today and next week will be available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. So without any further ado, let's get to the film recs. Okay, so my first recommendation for today is a silly one. It's available on Hoopla Digital, and that is 2006's She's the Man. Now, She's the Man is a modern day retelling of Shakespeare's The Twelfth Night, which tracks because The Twelfth Night is an utterly ludicrous play that is so much fun to watch. She's the Man follows our character Viola Johnson as she decides to take on her twin brother Sebastian's persona in order to enroll in an all-boys school so she can play on the soccer team. Yeah. Viola, when she gets to the boys' school, ends up rooming with Duke. Duke is kind of a big man on campus, especially with the soccer team, and they form a rapport really, really quickly. Of course, Viola starts to develop feelings for Duke as time goes on. Duke, who is already madly in love with a woman named Olivia, or I guess a teen girl named Olivia. Olivia, upon meeting Viola dressed as her brother Sebastian, promptly falls in love with Viola/Sebastian. So right there you've got a little bit of a triangle. But then fling in Sebastian, who actually ends up on scene at a certain point, and then you've got a love square. And it just keeps going from there. I mean, these are not atypical plot points in a lot of Shakespeare. You've got a load of comedy, complicated relationships, but it bizarrely works really, really well in the teen movie realm, like really, really well, because again, very silly plot. And then you give it all of these like teen hit points, these teen tropes. And I mean, you don't really have to stretch. It just fits. Throw into that a really, really good cast. I mean, honestly, as far as teen movies go, the cast has incredible chemistry with each other, all of the main characters, but also all of the secondary characters. And then you've got some pretty big names in here. It was pretty early on for a couple in their careers for a couple, but I'll get to that in just a second. So Viola is played by Amanda Bynes, who I do think had a really good sense of how to play these kinds of characters. It wasn't a huge amount of range. I'm not saying that she's Meryl Streep, but I think for the character she played at that point in her career, spot on. She does a good job with the over-the-top nature of certain things, knowing how far to push. And Duke, who is her love interest, is played by a very, very young Channing Tatum. I have never been a Channing Tatum fan, but for some reason, he works so well as this sort of lunkheady kind of character. And I have huge amounts of respect for Tatum because he knows how to play that kind of character up to a T. I mean, you see it in this, which is again very early on in his acting career, but then you see the evolution of this kind of character in, say, Lost City with Sandra Bullock, which is an excellent movie, by the by. Loads of fun. He knows what the audience wants from him, and he also knows how to play like a legit earnest character, even if that character has other quirks that are easy to play up. It's just a very nice sort of everyday Joe who just happens to be very much fitting an archetype. Uh, and it's fun. It's super fun. You've got a lot of very familiar faces within the adult part of the cast too, and all of them are excellent character actors. Um, and just in general, the way the writer has woven teen tropes into the whole Shakespearean storyline is really fun and ridiculous. Whether you are a fan of the original Twelfth Night or you're just someone who is coming into the story looking for something silly and a little romantic and just fun to watch, I think this one is definitely a good option to start with. I also think it's a really good gateway to get teens and maybe tweens into the whole idea of these kinds of Shakespearean storylines. They aren't so out there with like the vengeance, the murder, the death, the tragedy that the tragedies or the histories go. So they're light, fluffy, a little less trippy than, say, Midsummer Night's Dream. And, you know, this one in particular, I think, is really well adapted to appeal to the younger audience and the adult audience. So, available on Hoopla, like I said, She's the Man. Definitely a fun one to watch, especially if you are trying to appeal to a broad range of ages. Okay, my other film recommendation for this week is available on DVD and Blu-ray via our CleveNet service, and that is 1999's 10 Things I Hate About You. 10 Things I Hate About You is one of my favorite teen films of all time. Barring the whole Shakespeare connection, I just think it is an incredibly well done teen movie. Really just movie in general, but especially within the teen subset. And in this one, we have a story that is loosely based on The Taming of the Shrew. Also a really fun, silly play that I have always enjoyed. And it just translates so well to this teen universe that 10 Things I Hate About You it takes place in. I would not have thought that this would work so well, but it does. We are dealing with a family of three. The father has made the rule that the younger daughter cannot date until the elder daughter, Kat, decides to date as well. Bianca is the younger daughter who happens to be very much a social butterfly. She super popular, really pretty, flits here, flits there, has her eye on this really popular jockey kind of character, and is furious that her older sister won't date, thus allowing her to as well. Enter New Boy at School. New Boy at School meets Bianca, madly falls in love with her at first sight, which is, again, common trope in both Shakespeare and teen films. And he, along with a number of other side characters, devise this plan to find a man for Kat. This search results in this glorious montage of potential dates. I mean, it is amazing and so wrong, but it's really funny. And finally, he settles on a young delinquent named Patrick Verona, who he convinces through... there's a little bit of a comedy of errors in order to convince Patrick to start dating Kat, or to convince Kat to date him. But he agrees to take on the job. And that ends up snowballing into this fantastic series of events where Patrick has to end up convincing Kat to fall in love with him. And shocker, he ends up falling in love with Kat as he goes through his little quests to win her heart. Um, Kat is played by the queen of 1990s teen movies, Julia Stiles, and Patrick Verona is played by Heath Ledger. The two of them are so lovely on screen. They are an adorable looking couple, but they also have really good chemistry together. I mean, they just really do. We see how Heath Ledger's career uh roles. He's an excellent actor, and he, while being very young in this, you definitely see like the seeds of that performance style even here. He does do an excellent job, and the two of them just play off of one another very, very well. And it's just really fun to watch, you know? So, this is one of those movies that has a great cast. Not only are they wonderful, but all of the side actors are. Joseph Gordon Levitt is in here. He plays the new boy who sort of sets everything in motion. Um, you've got adults in here, like Allison Janney plays a foul-mouthed and ridiculous guidance counselor who should not be a guidance counselor, but she is glorious in this role. I mean, Kat's father is hilarious, character actor you 100% would recognize. It's just full of people who know their way around a script and know how to play the kinds of characters that they've been cast as. Again, as mentioned, excellent chemistry between both Kat and Patrick. You've got an amazing soundtrack. So many female-led bands, which works perfectly well with the storyline, of course, but they do covers of really famous songs. Letters to Cleo does a cover of Want You to Want Me that is amazing. That's still actually the version that plays in my head rather than the original. And then you have one of the best, most ridiculous scenes of wooing in teen movie history. Yeah, a lot of people think of John Cusack with the boombox over his head or things like that. I think of the scene where Patrick Verona essentially steals the stadium speaker system in order to publicly humiliate himself by serenading Kat while she practices for soccer with a cover of Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. It is glorious. So there's just a lot to love about this particular adaptation, and works really well for multiple age ranges. It's accessible to preteens and teens, and definitely to adults as well. Then if you happen to be around my age and you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you'll have a great deal of nostalgia for this film, I'm sure, just because it was such a big deal when it came out. And yeah, it's just a great movie if you're looking for something fun, fluffy, light, romantic, and that you can potentially sort of funnel teens towards a more traditional adaptation of certain Shakespeare plays after this. So, great movie all the way around and absolutely recommended. I did have one other title that I wanted to recommend. It doesn't really fit in with the movie festival idea, but totally will work for binge watching purposes. It is available on DVD and Blu-ray via our CleveNet service, and that is the television series Sons of Anarchy. I'm not going to talk a lot about Sons of Anarchy, but it is very loosely based on Hamlet. Lots of violence, lots of crime, a lot of mystery and action. It's incredibly well acted. You have Charlie Hunnam playing your main character of Jax. You've got Ron Perlman playing this really layered, really fascinating villain style character. Katie Seagal is in this. She plays Jax's mother. And I mentioned those three in particular because, much like in Hamlet, the relationships have so many complicated layers to them. They really do here, and that those relationships are what drives the series forward for all 7 seasons that it was on. Very well acted. I do know that they did work with at least one consultant who was actively a part of the Hells Angels, so they did get like behind the scenes real descriptions of what goes on in the 1%. those sort of outlaw motorcycle gangs, and it's really interesting series. Not everybody's cup of tea, I know, because one, there's a ton of violence, but the drama in it and the story and the writing is so incredibly good. Like really, really good. So if you are interested in something really very dark and gritty, in very much keeping with this sort of Hamlet kind of theme, that does, still have a really accessible modern day feel. I mean, if you don't know Hamlet, you're not going to know that this is based on it. But if you do, you'll see so many bits and pieces that they play with throughout all of the seasons. So yeah, I think this is an incredibly good series. I binge watched like the first season in like 2 days, because it was just that hard to stop watching. You just wanted to go episode to episode to episode. And you do have 7 whole seasons of it. So yeah, if you're looking for something to binge watch, again, not quite movie festival, but still, I thought definitely worth recommending. So again, available on DVD or Blu-ray. Sons of Anarchy, excellent, excellent TV series. Okay, so those were my recommendations for modern retellings of Shakespearean plays. If you have any recommendations you would like to share that follow the same vein, please recommend those below. If you have any recommendations for future themes, please, please, please definitely share those in the comments. Always looking for help with that. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Had so much fun putting these ones together. Next week, stay tuned for more traditional adaptations of Shakespearean plays if you're looking for that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out. Again, thanks for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye.